And we are live. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze and our May pop-up book rec party. My name's Mary Weber O'Malley. I'm here with Ellen. We'll see Karen for sure coming on in a little bit. We're a smaller crew today, but we all have some pretty big stacks of books to talk about. So your TBR, no worries there. We're going to make sure that your TBR is crazy tall by the time we are done tonight. So Ellen, do you mind if I jump in with my titles?
Sure, go ahead.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to start with and I guess I should state that A Mighty Blaze, if you're joining and you aren't familiar, we are a group of volunteers that gathered during the early days of COVID to connect readers and authors, and we have evolved with that. We have shows several times a week. Please do find us on social media, follow us there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe to our newsletter. Go to our website and subscribe to that, and you will see all of the wonderful events that we have going on all the time. We have just incredible events coming up in the month of May on Thoughtful Bro, Friday Frontliners. Ellen is one of our debut hosts. She's got some incredible authors coming up. So lots of good things. Follow us on all the socials, and then you won't miss out on any of our excitement. And my first title tonight is from the Master. I'm going to give everybody a little confession here. I have not, prior to this, read Colm Tóibín. I did not read Brooklyn.
Wow.
I didn't see Brooklyn. And Brooklyn came out 20 years ago. And it has been all this long, or that long ago, or is it not so? 20 years ago in the book. Sorry. The book takes place 20 years later.
I can check that fact for you.
So the book takes place 20 years later. It is, hello, Renee from Southeast Florida, and welcome. We're so glad to have you here. So Long Island by Colm Tóibín. What I learned within the first few pages of this book is why he is the master. Within a very few sentences, you are placed right into the heart of the story. You know exactly who the characters are. You can hear them. You can hear their accents. You feel the energy around this huge Italian table that the matriarch has in her house that is on the cul-de-sac that is filled with these families' homes. You are in the mind of the main character, and you know exactly what's happening. And he pulls you in. Hello, Sharon person. Colm pulls you into the pages, and you are right there with his characters until the very last sentence. And this had such an incredibly satisfying ending after, chapter after chapter of not being sure where it was going to go. Again, he's the master for a reason. So Long Island, I read it without having read Brooklyn. I am told by many people that if you read Brooklyn first, it will just completely enhance your reading experience with Long Island, but not necessary to do so.
And Brooklyn, by the way, came out 14 years ago. So you weren't
14 years ago. Thank you very much. This next book is nonfiction. It is one of the most special, soul-affirming memoirs that I have certainly read this year and maybe in the past several years. And hello, Lori from North Carolina, and Renee. Glad to have all of you here joining. So this next book, I am imploring you, and all of you joining from the East Coast, this author will be touring there in June. Florida, I think North Carolina. He will be in New York and a few other East Coast cities. But This is Brother, Do You Love Me? And it is by Manny Coe and his brother, Ruben. Let me tell you about this book. My dear friend, my literary twin sister, Pamela Klingerhorn, read this and told me I needed to drop everything, get a copy, and read it. And she never steers me wrong. So this is a story of Ruben, who's age 38 and living in a home for adults with learning disabilities. He was struggling to accept that he had Down syndrome. He was depressed and isolated. This was during COVID. It was supposed to be independent living. Instead, the caregivers kind of left everybody to their own devices, and left to his own, Ruben isolated and became nonverbal. He was, barely existing when he sent a text to his brother Manny, and the text said, brother dot do dot you dot love dot me dot. Manny got that text, got on a plane from Spain, immediately flew to his brother's side, took him out of the assisted living, and brought him to live in a little rural cottage where they spent the next months healing. And Manny working with Ruben to establish trust again, establish their close bond that they had once shared. This is written by Manny and illustrated by Ruben, who is a beautiful artist with, he writes his own poetry and his own captions to these pictures. The two of them have toured around Europe. And like I said, they're coming to the US. This book is coming out on Tuesday, and it is a treasure, an absolute treasure. Brother, Do You Love Me? By Manny Coe and Ruben Coe. It will be one of the most special books you read this year. I promise, promise, promise. And hello, Jean from Upper Michigan. Good to see you here too. All right, so this is a double treat for me to talk about. This is Natalie Jenner's next book, which is Every Time We Say Goodbye. She is the author of the Jane Austen Society, which was a book that I just fell in love with. And Natalie has continued to bring her characters. They weave through her other stories. And I just got a very early copy, so early that it's not even on paper yet, of Natalie's next book, Austen at Sea, where she's really revisiting the Jane Austen group. And so I love Every Time We Say Goodbye, but I think Austen at Sea might be my favorite yet. So Every Time We Say Goodbye, which, this is what you're going to read while you're waiting, is 1955. Vivian Lowry's career as a playwright does not look bright. At a friend's suggestion, she takes a job as a script doctor on a major film, shooting in Rome's Cinecittà Studios, hoping to forge a new life while searching what really happened to her deceased fiance during the war. There she finds a vibrant movie-making scene filled with rising stars, acclaimed directors, and famous actors in a country that's torn between its past and its potentially bright future. And I see Lori just finished Every Time We Say Goodbye, so there you go. Natalie she really has a gift for placing us in her stories and making her characters come to life. I love this book so, so much, and all of Natalie's books are an absolute treasure, as is she. So we're going to stay in historic fiction, but we're going a little further back to World War I with Miss Morgan's Book Brigade. I loved this cover. It pulled me right in. This is the New York Times bestselling author of The Paris Library, returning with a brilliant novel based on the true story of the American librarian who changed the literary landscape of France. Every time I think with the wars, okay, I've read everything that there is, something new comes out. And so this, as the Great War rages, Jessie Carson takes a leave of absence from the New York Public Library to work for the American Committee for Devastated France. Founded by millionaire Anne Morgan, this international group of women helps rebuild devastated French communities just miles from the front. Upon arrival, Jessie strives to establish something the French have never seen: children's libraries. She turns ambulances into bookmobiles and instructs the first French female librarians. Then she disappears.
Wow.
It's just absolutely amazing. And I was just so pulled into the story of these women. You know, I won't go too far on my soapbox, but as women, we've been everywhere. We've been to all of these places. We've been to all of the wars. And yet, you know, our contributions for so long have been swept to the side or kept in the shadows. And these authors who are bringing them to the forefront, I am just so grateful for. So Miss Morgan's Book Brigade, a wonderful, wonderful historical fiction for World War I.
Mary, let me just jump in to say how nice it is to see that librarians are getting their spotlight in the contemporary literature world, because they're certainly, you know, under the gun, so to speak, with all the book banning and all the protests and having to protect their shelves and to make sure our children are getting the books that they want to read and need to read for whatever reason. And so not only do we champion our librarians and encourage people to be supportive of their libraries, but to be able to also go out and then read about librarians, what a bonus.
Amen. Absolutely. Librarians are heroes on these front lines right now. And I know a lot of them, they didn't ask for it. You go into library science for a love of books.
Yes.
You know, you don't go in there expecting to have your livelihood or even your life threatened by these absolutely crazy people that are out there that are trying to restrict access to knowledge. So
we just heard that To Kill a Mockingbird has been taken off the shelves because, quote, it's disturbing to people. Hello? What was the point of the book?
Exactly. Exactly. And just to stay on this for one more second, most of the book challenges that are occurring right now are being issued by the same 8 or 9 women in the country that have nothing better to do than to sit and issue these challenges. If they spent a little more time actually reading and a little less time living in fear that children might become critical, independent thinkers, the world would be a better place. So that's the Mary and Ellen show on.
All right.
So back into books. This next one is an absolutely, because we can't, you know, I can't always read in the heavy stuff. I really like to move around in my reading. If I read something heavy, I need something light to balance it out. I'm a very emotional reader and I can't stay too long in the dark. So this next one was a perfect balance. It is Better Left Unsent. Mm-hmm. It is by Leah Lewis. And it is I would call it a contemporary romance. I don't know if it, according to my daughter's rules for romance, I don't know if it's technically a romance book because I don't think it fills all of the criteria. So it's more romantic fiction, okay. But it's all delightful. And so this is so many ways to torpedo your career and your love life. So little time. 2 years ago, 29-year-old receptionist Millie Chandler had her heart spectacularly broken. Ever since, she's been a closed book, vowing to keep everything to herself to protect herself from getting hurt again. But she does write emails, sarcastic replies to her rude boss, hard truths to her friends, and of course that page-long love declaration to her ex, who is now engaged to someone else. The emails live safely in her drafts, but after a server outage at work, all of her emails get sent.
Oh, wow.
And she comes into work the next day and finds out that every snarky or romantic or rude or whatever thought she's ever had has now been sent to the person that she never thought would hear them. It is it's charming, it's funny, it's cringy. It just has all the good stuff. It has great dialogue in it, wonderful characters, better left unsent for that palate cleansing light read. Pick that one up. This next one is also some romance. It's a rom-com time travel mystery. And if you haven't already seen this on all of this, not just the social media, but People Magazine, oh my gosh, this is everywhere. And I don't know if one of the big book clubs has already picked it up or if it's waiting to be announced, but The Ministry of Time. This had the rights were sold in 17 languages. Wow. It's already got a TV adaptation in the works. And the author, who is also an editor, during lockdown in the UK, found herself kind of enamored. She went down a polar exploration rabbit hole and became enamored with one of the polar explorers. Started to write something that was a little like fan fiction about this man, and then took it a step further and thought, what if he traveled through time? What would that look like? The Ministry of Time takes us into Britain, where they have figured out time travel. They've pulled different characters back from ahead from the past, but they've only chosen people who are just about to die. So they don't mess with the future that way. So these people were all going to die anyway. And so they pull them into the future and assign each one of them a bridge. So each person gets a guide to help them acclimate to the future. And it is hilarious. It is charming. It's got that little bit of romance. It's got great dialogue. This was the darling of the booksellers at our winter conference. Oh, who is the author? So sorry, Renee. Kayleigh Bradley, who's just a delightful, magical human being. Kayleigh Bradley, thanks for asking that. Anyway, it's been the darling of the book selling world, and with good reason. It's just a wonderful, wonderful novel. And my last two, and I hope I'm not taking any, but Ellen will just chime in. These are both debuts. The first one, and I think this is one that you just didn't have room for in your schedule, Ellen, but Shanghailanders.
Correct.
Obviously, this is not the final cover.
I can go get you one with a cover.
Oh, Ellen's sure. All right, Ellen's going to show her hello, Robin from Coeur d'Alene. Good to see all of you here tonight. So glad you are all joining. And if you joined late and you missed any of this, it will live on our YouTube channel, and you can always go back and rewatch and get the titles. These titles will also all be in a Mighty Blaze's bookshop stall. So you can go. Oh, there you go. Look at that cover. Look at that.
It's a very intriguing cover, and I like this book. My schedule is booked.
There you go. It's yep. So this is a dazzling and ambitious debut novel. The year is 2040, and wealthy real estate investor Leo Yang, handsome, distinguished, a real Shanghai man, is on the train back to the city after seeing his wife or his family off at the airport. His sophisticated Japanese-French wife, Echo, and their two oldest children, Yumi and Yoko, are headed for Boston. though one daughter's revelation will soon reroute them to Paris. Um, so, those of you who watch TV and watched Seinfeld will remember that Seinfeld had a very breakthrough episode where they started the episode at the end and then worked their way backwards. And that is what Julie does with this book. It starts in 2040 and rewinds back to 2014, which when I read it did that, the first thing I thought of was Seinfeld. And then I thought, am I going to be able to do this with a book? Julie does it beautifully. Ellen, I'm sure you'll agree that she really does a great job. There's so much to talk about in this book. It would make a great book club pick. Absolutely. Shanghailanders by Julie Min. And I have one more book to talk about. Also a debut. And, you know, I get on that female rage soapbox and oh my gosh, I get up there when I think about this book. This is The Daughters of Shandong by Eve Chung, another glorious, gorgeous debut. This book had me, this was the kind of book that I really needed a palate cleanser afterwards because I was losing my mind reading this. So, Daughters are the Ang family's curse. In 1948, civil war ravages the Chinese countryside, but in rural Shandong, the wealthy land-owning Angs are more concerned about their lack of an heir. Hei, the eldest of four girls, spends her days looking after her younger sisters, and their mother, mistreated by the family for failing to birth a boy, performs her own small acts of rebellion in the kitchen. As the communist army closes in on the town, the rest of the prosperous household flees, leaving behind the girls and their mother because they view them as useless mouths to feed. Without an Ang male to punish, the land-seizing cadres choose Hei as the eldest child to stand trial for her family's crimes. She barely survives their brutality. Realizing the worst is yet to come, the mother and daughters plan their escape. Starving and penniless but resourceful, they forge travel permits and embark on a 1,000-mile journey to confront the family that abandoned them. Oh my gosh. I rage read this entire novel. It is so suspenseful. And this would also make just an incredible and amazing book club discussion book, because you're going to want to talk about it when you finish it. So great one to recommend to your whole book club, Daughters of Shandong by Eve Chung. All of these, I think, are releasing, well, a lot of them are releasing this coming Tuesday, but they're all May releases. So if you rush off to purchase any and they say, that's not out for a couple of weeks, pre-order it. It'll be there when you're ready for it, or, you know, it'll be waiting for you on its release day. Those are all my titles. Perfect timing. Karen's here too. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen, and I'm going to listen to what you guys have to recommend.
Okay. And of course, if you're ordering books, the best place to go do it is bookshop.org. You can sign in and choose A Mighty Blaze as your favorite bookstore. We're not really a bookstore, but bookstore.org has been helping indie bookstores and people like A Mighty Blaze or groups like us. The more we recommend them, we partner with them, and they share a little love back with us. So it's always a good way to buy your books. They've got everything. You can pre-order, or you can go to Libro.fm, which Mary and I love, especially, and you can get all your audiobooks there. And again, it's a partnership, so they're doing their work to help the indie bookstores and booksellers and indie presses as well. And so we really like having them all as our partners and encourage Blaze Nation to go that direction as well. So I have a few books, and I also have a dog who's probably going to show up here and interrupt us. So if you've been watching us lately, you know that we love Mark Cecil, The Thoughtful Bro, and Bunyan and Henry. And when this came out, I was like, well, I like Mark a lot. Doesn't sound like my kind of read, but I'm going to support a fellow Blazer and I'm going to buy another book because I need more books. And so I pre-ordered this and it arrived in early April and I was busy. So I didn't get to it till quite recently. And I've got to say, for somebody who would say, nah, this is not my genre, this is so my genre. This book is an adventure story. It's magical. It meanders. It tells the story of Paul Bunyan and John Henry, who each have troubling things going on with their family and are on a quest to make things right for themselves. And they encounter all sorts of crazy characters and circumstances and adventures. And it really just so captivated me because it was just telling a story. And I know Mark started this story by telling the story to his children at night and then ultimately said, I wonder how this could develop. And the answer is beautifully. It felt like a fairy tale. It felt like a bedtime story. I read at night, but I've not thought about bedtime stories in several years. This was great. And I think, read it with your teenager, read it with your 8-year-old. They will love this story. It's compelling. It's just, there's so much magic in it and you will laugh out loud. And it's just, I always say, I'm about literary fiction and I'm, cultural snob here. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to want this little adventure tale. I want it, and I think everybody will enjoy it. And I know my friends Mary and Karen have read it as well and will agree. I'm going to talk about 2 books that the authors I've had on the show, on the debut spotlight. One is Sarah Ruiz Grossman. She is a former reporter for the Huffington Post out in California. And when she went out there, one of the things she worked on were wildfires and homelessness were 2 of her beats. And they come together in this book where we're in California, where wildfire season is probably soon to be upon us again, and deals with the impact of a fire that rages out of control and how it affects people of different socioeconomic backgrounds and who all have connections, you find out, one with another. But there's high school seniors who are busy trying to get ready for college and getting their projects underway. There are couples that are already in a tense place who find the fire really exacerbates things. There are wealthy people and there are people who are unhoused and living in their van. And one fire affects all of them. And especially when we think about all the advocacy that's going on amongst young people, these young people get involved in trying to think about how renewal looks in California after a devastating fire and what they as 18-year-olds can do to affect change in their local government. Very good book. Next up, you may have heard about this or seen Simone on various shows. She was on Good Morning America. She was just put on the Glamour magazine top 20 book club books. This was a Book of the Month Club pick. It has gotten some rave reviews. This is The Wives by Simone Gorindo. This is about a debut memoir by a woman whose husband, relatively new husband, they're living in New York City, and he says, guess what, honey? I want to enlist and go overseas. And she is somebody who grew up in a pacifist family, went to, as she says, every anti-war, anti-gun rally there was, and now she is brought down to the South and becomes one of the wives who stay back while their husbands deploy. And this is about sisterhood and friendship and what happens when you all of a sudden have to rethink your life in ways that you never thought about it, and what this change does to her as a woman, to her friendships, to her marriage. to how she thinks about the world. And she's a delightful person. I interviewed her. So you'll see her. She's going to make the rounds, I think, because this book sort of came out quietly, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of buzz coming out. Sort of right as it started, people already started talking about it. It's a great read. I have no military background. As I told Simone, I think every single military wife should get this book. I think the Department of Defense should put in a really big order. So, but if have nothing to do with the military, I think you'll really find it fascinating because you do learn a lot about what it's like. And so highly recommend it. The next book the light's is not playing favors with me. It's a nice shiny cover. Lionel Shriver, Mania. I had never read Lionel Shriver before. She is a somewhat controversial person based on her viewpoints. She writes a column in The Spectator in England and currently lives in Portugal and New York. She wrote a book called Mania, which I think is, it's fiction. Some of her columns, which are nonfiction, I would have a little more trouble with, but Mania is about the idea in a not too distant world where calling somebody dumb or thinking something stupid is outlawed. So it's the mental parity legislation. Everybody's as good as everybody else. Everyone is excellent. You cannot discriminate against somebody because you think they're not qualified for the job, because everybody's good for every job. And it's a comedy. It's got a lot of truth to it. It tells the story of two friends who sort of think they're on the same page about these things and find out that they're not. And what happens in a world where friendships fall apart over ideology. This one is a humorous ideology, but obviously we're living in a time where people's relationships are challenged by the diversity of thinking. It's a quick read. It's interesting. I found it very funny. I have a couple books I don't have the covers of handy, but I do have screenshots, which hopefully will show up. Hold on, if I can find them. One of them I'm listening to right now is, my phone is Knife. I'm trying to make sure you can see this. It's got a gorgeous cover, which I'm having trouble showing. Knife by Salman Rushdie. I'm listening to this. This is a book about the attack on his life that happened at Chautauqua Institute a couple summers ago. And he tells the story of this harrowing attack. He was far closer to death than I knew. He had multiple surgeons operating on him immediately. And he tells the story of his recovery, his marriage, how it affects his family, how he deals with this idea. The cover is gorgeous. Listening to him describe it, it's you cringe, but you also laugh, when he suggests, this is not if you can avoid having this treatment done, I would recommend it. It's not highly comfortable. Things like that. And hearing him read it, obviously we know he survives this, but hearing him really talk about the impact of this horrific attack that just came out of the blue. I've been to Chautauqua. It's a very peaceful place. It's not the kind of place one expects to get stabbed 28 times as Salman Rushdie was. And it's just a beautiful book. Two books that are coming up on Debut Spotlight. This is, I'll put it on this side so it doesn't interfere with my name. Whale Fall by Elizabeth O'Connor. Now, there was another book last year called Whale Fall. This is not that one. This is a book about a very isolated small island that gets visited by a couple of ethnographers who are trying to understand how do these very isolated people live on this very isolated island where everything comes in by boat, and it's a very small community, and how do they survive it all? And there's romance, there's a little bit of mystery. You don't really know what these people are up to. It changes back and forth. The writing is exquisite. This is a debut. There was I believe, 10 publisher bidding war on this book for a debut novel. It is stunning. It's probably the most elegant book I've read, certainly this year and probably in several years. So I'm really eager to interview Elizabeth O'Connor later this month. 2 more, then I'll turn it over to Karen. This is also a book that's coming out this summer. I will have Jessica Waite on, I believe, in July. It's called The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards. It is a memoir. It opens with a sentence I will not read out loud, but that you will never forget, unlike any sentence you've ever read. This is a woman whose husband drops dead on a business trip, and they'd been having some issues, and she starts looking at his computer and discovers immediately, among other things, that he had a huge porn addiction, and that her suspicions about his having affairs or having some affairs were true. And meanwhile, his family, he's got multiple siblings, he's the best guy you ever met. Nothing you can say is wrong about this guy. And here she is trying to deal with the aftermath of both grieving and then discovering that the husband, who she thought was probably not the best guy right now, was really terrible. And it's funny, it's warm. As his family said, they didn't really like the title so much, and that they think a lot of people will pick it up because of the title, but that they will stick with it because it's a great read. And it really is. So she's going to be on sometime this summer. And then here's one more book that I had to pass up just because I can't do a show every week. And there's so many good debuts coming out. This is The Safe Keep by Yael van der Wooden, who is a writer who lives in the Netherlands. And this is I'm just going to read the back. It says, it's 1961 and the rural Dutch province of Overijssel is quiet. Bomb craters have been filled, buildings reconstructed. The war is well and truly over. Living alone in her late mother's country house, Isabel knows her life is as it should be, led by routine and discipline. But it is all upended when her brother brings his graceless new girlfriend, Ava, to her doorstep and leaves her there as a guest to stay for the season. The back says, and I haven't read all of this, I'll confess, but says, it's brilliantly plotted, an uncommonly assured debut novel. It shines a light into the shadowy corners of our histories and our homes, exposing the unexpected facets of revenge and redemption. And it's just you get in real close. You get to really know these people. And again, I wish I had more time. I would definitely want to feature Yael on the show, but it's a good book, and it is coming out the end of May. That's what I got.
Thanks, Ellen. So I've got a couple of books here. So my first book is Natalie Jenner, Every Time We Say Goodbye. And did we already do this one? I guess I might have.
Go for it.
Anyway, if we have already done it, then you've heard about it, but it's really good. And I love Natalie Jenner, and she's amazing. I got to meet her in March 2020, right before the whole world shut down. So that was very memorable. With Mary, we worked together. So if you've already heard it, I'll just say it's a really good book, and go pre-order it.
Sure. Let's hear your take.
I just love the way that Natalie writes. She takes you into the world, and you want to stay in there. And so it's about, it's set in 1950s, and it's about a playwright, Vivian Lowry, who her husband her fiance is missing from the war, and she gets a chance to go to Italy, I believe, to work on a movie. And she thinks that this is an opportunity for her to maybe learn more about what happened to her husband. I'm sorry, fiance. Why do I keep saying that? And I just love the way Natalie writes. There's a lot of strong characters in this book that you really start to care about. And that's what I love about Natalie's books. So it's really good. I recommend it highly. And then I have a thriller here, Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda. Sorry. So I'm not a big thriller reader, but I pick one up every once in a while. And so this was by Megan, and she's a New York Times bestselling author. And so it's about the character is Hazel Sharp, and she's the daughter of Mirror Lake's longtime local detective. And when she unexpectedly inherits her childhood home, and she goes back to where she grew up. She had left years before. Her mother had disappeared, and so she left years before. And so when she comes back, there's a drought, and the lake starts to recede, and you start to find there's like things in the lake that start to pop up. And so it's really interesting. And I'm not a big thriller reader, but I really enjoyed this one, and it really kept my attention. So this is a really good one. So then I have The Half Moon, which is by Mary Beth Keane, and she wrote Ask Again, Yes, which I really loved. And so this one is actually coming out in paperback very soon. And so this one is just about Malcolm Gebhard. He works at the Half Moon Bar. He's a bartender, and when the owner retires, he takes it over. But he just loves it. It's such a magical place, but it's a struggle for him to take it over. And then his wife is involved in a law career, but she sorry, it's been a while since I read it. She's looking to be a mother, but it's not working out for her. And so this is kind of more about middle-aged people and the challenges they're facing. And again, I just love this author, and it was really good. So I've got one more, and I'll be honest, I haven't read this one yet, but it's Miss Morgan's Book Brigade by Janet Skesley and Charles. And she wrote The Paris Library. And so I'm going to recommend this one strictly from reading The Paris Library because I loved it so much. And so this is, sorry, maybe you can't see it, but it's Miss Morgan's Book Brigade. Oh, there's Mary. Thank you, Mary. And so I'm really looking forward to getting a copy and reading it, and I'll review it next month. But again, I'm recommending it strictly on the Paris Library because I love that so much. And so those are my books for this time. And thanks very much.
Yay. I almost forgot to mention that this book came out in April, but I will be interviewing Anne Lamott on May 24th as one of our Friday frontliners. Anne Lamott, she is, I raved about this book last month. I'm going to keep raving about it. Somehow Thoughts on Love is just a beautiful soul healing book that even in these bleak and dark times that we live in, Anne's words let me know that it's all going to be okay, that we're going to be okay. And that thought just comes through page after page, sentence after sentence. I find Anne to just be so real and authentic and true and honest and funny. So I cannot wait. I've just started to think about what I want to talk to her about with this book. I can't wait. That will be on A Mighty Blaze, May 24th, 3 p.m. Central Time on our Friday Frontliner series. So I hope you'll all tune in for that. And thank you to everybody. We had a great crowd join us tonight. Lots of great comments. It sounds like we've got a group of great readers that are tuning in each month. And we love the fact that you're all hanging out with us, talking books once a month. So
Nothing
thank you
better.
for that. Again, follow us and follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. And that way, and Karen's the one who puts that newsletter together. She will make sure that you do not miss any of our great events. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you back here in June with some more great recommendations.
Thank
Bye,
you.
all.